Welcome everyone to our webinar focused on the impact of GenAI on business innovation. I'm Sunil Mistry, a director within the partner ecosystem at HCLTech. Today, I'm accompanied by two presenters. So to start with, I'd like to invite Kristen to introduce herself.
Hey, thanks, Sunil. Super excited to be here. My name is Kristen Call. I'm the Senior Industry Advisor for Retail, Hospitality, and a bunch of other verticals. And I'm super excited to talk about Gen AI and the impacts to business. It's a pretty cool topic.
Thank you, Kristen. Now we move to Debraj for his introduction.
Hey, hi Sunil, good to be part of this conversation. So I'm part of the industry solutions group for retail and CPG here in HCL. And I'm real excited to be part of this conversation over the next few minutes. So good to be part of it.
Okay, great. So to start with, let's get going. I'd like to explore the evolution of GenAI. Notably, it went mainstream in 2023, as you know. So can you elaborate on the key changes and developments that have occurred in the GenAI landscape from 2023 to 2024?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sure. I mean, we just entered into 24, right? I mean, it's only March, but it feels like it's already June or July. It's gone so fast. But, I think that from the retail perspective, it's gone, just the technology itself, the buzzwords, the way that it's just kind of been in conversation is really fast-tracked. It's probably, to me, it's been faster than just AI. I think that retail is really trying to understand, what do I do with this technology? My people are going online right now and they're using ChatGPT and they're doing all kinds of things with this technology. What's the real impact? And I think it's moving really rapidly from it's a buzzword to how do I actually take this technology and utilize it? And I think that it's twofold. I can see it helping my business, but then what's the risks? Because this is brand new technology. How do I implement this? And so I think it's just understanding both of those both of those topics of how do I use this versus there's a lot of risk when I don't know about something. So to me, that's kind of the biggest impact. And then also, how can I take this technology and enhance the use cases? And then understanding what kind of use cases it can impact. I think all those kinds of questions are being talked about right now.
Debraj, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, so the thing is, when this started off in 2023, there was a huge amount of hype around this entire topic of generative AI. And it was not for no reason. I mean, when you find snippets of information that Uber had taken about 70 odd months to reach 100 million users, whereas ChatGPT took just 2. So you know that there was something which was coming up. Now, while 2023 was all about the hype and the excitement, and also trying to figure out what this new kid on the block called generative AI is, come 2024, clients are more looking at realizing ROI from this new technology. And for that, they are actually looking to vendors like ours, HCL and others, where they can realize which all use cases they can target. And for that, the thing is the conversations become a lot more strategic by the very essence of it. Because it's not just tech ROI, we are also looking at business ROI, which clients are wanting to realize. So we are getting to handhold our clients in this journey and identify the right use cases across the entire value chain for retail and CPG. So that's how I think things are panning out. And it's a fast evolving space at that.
So it's interesting that you mentioned use cases. So Christian, what type of Gen AI use cases are becoming in your engagement that are increasingly become relevant and frequently discussed in the customer engagement that you have been involved in?
Well, I think it's still early days in its investigative, right? I think that the biggest one is how can I impact associates more than customers at this point? How can I provide this technology to make them more efficient, a better experience at work, I think the number one topic is around just customer service, right? So if I can't get to a customer fast enough, how can I provide an interactive tool for a customer to feel like there's an associate, but the associates are still working with other customers and being productive. So I think it's, yes, it's helping with customer experiences, but it's really kind of that associate-focused tool set. The other one is just understanding how can these kinds of technologies, not just online, but how can it impact in the store? So is this going to be able to tell associates or even customers about products, right? Because remember, GenAI is about taking text and pictures and doing something really cool with those that are making us hopefully smarter human beings. So how can we use that technology to help a customer have a better experience about a product, and an associate maybe find a product easier rather than having to go down an aisle that they're new, they don't know where these products go. How can these kinds of things help them? So I think that early days still of the impact of where GenAI specifically can help in use cases. But I mean, I think that with any technology like this, we're just touching the surface of where it can impact retail.
And Debraj, you're the client partner at HCLTech. So what are the GenAI use cases within the retail sector that you focus on? That you're experiencing that are having the highest level of engagement and traction?
Surely. So I think broadly, if I were to look at the use cases, they can either be revenue touching, which would be increasing the top line, or it can be something around cost takeouts. So as an example, operational improvements, supply chain, merchandising, and so on. But broadly, if I were to look at the ones which are customer facing, which can be a CX or a digital marketing or a digital commerce oriented use cases, we are finding a greater amount of traction in those areas. It would also include things like conversational chatbot, where we can probably have some efficiency improvement and so on. So that's an area, and that's actually corroborated by another poll which was done by Gartner, where they had found that the max amount of traction as of now, which can be realized from generative AI, would be the front-end functions. But having said that, it's not to say that supply chain is anywhere left behind. I mean, there are a lot of use cases on supply chain as well. As an example, procurement RFP creation. That's one area where there's a big application of generative AI. Similarly, there would be the entire area of supplier risk sensing, which again is a major area where AI and generative AI can play a role. So I think across the entire spectrum of retail value chain, the front-end modules, the back-end functions, there's also the technology ones, which would typically be the co-pilots of the world, or automating code generation or test script generation. I mean, these are areas, again, where we are finding that clients are really looking forward to us to handhold them. So I think these, by and large, would be the areas where we are finding a very good bit of traction.
I think that's a good segue into moving into a conversation around what are the enabling technologies for use cases. So, Kristen, from Intel's perspective, regarding the use cases that you mentioned, which technologies are facilitating their implementation?
Well, I think that's a big question for retail because a lot of these Gen AI models take, large data sets, right? And how do you absorb those kinds of costs? So you're thinking about, do I need to have neural net, processing units? What kind of technology do I need to have? Do I need to have GPUs? What kind of things do I need to have to be able to take that data and crunch it so it's meaningful? Right now, I think it's not necessarily feasible. I think it's utilizing partners like you and reaching into the ecosystem in order to understand how to get these models to, affordable for what a retailer can do. But it's just large data sets, and it's not that retailers don't have enough data. They always have enough data. It's just how do they get it into these intelligent systems? And so I think it's going to take folks like you to be able to help them, direct them to where they need to go. So I think there's the technology stacks are there. As we start to see the smarter chips, the things that are coming out from Intel, those are all going to play a role. But how you're going to implement that to be affordable for retail, I think it's going to be a big play here. And I know that you guys are going to be right there helping them.
So on that note, Debraj, in your role, what type of GenAI use cases are gaining traction, especially those being frequently brought to you by customers during those interactions, especially now that we're in 2024, where it's not simply about POC anymore, right?
Correct. No, I think, like as I said, the modules on the front end part, which would be CX related digital marketing, there's a good bit of traction. I mean, if I were to pick probably the top 3 areas where we are finding some very good bit of traction, the first would probably be customer experience, which would be handling the entire topic of personalization, hyper-personalization, because that's a big area in the mind of customers. The second would be digital marketing, which would also touch upon areas like segment of one, which we all know of in the world of retail. The third would be around store analytics. So how better we can have some analytics done on the in-store footfalls and things like those, so that we can tailor the merchandising, the visual merchandising, and all of those accordingly. So I think that would be on the front end, like on the front end side. Similarly, on the back end side for supply chain, I think there is some traction which we are seeing on things like procurement, RFP creation, which I was talking about. The area of supplier risk sensing, again, that's again finding some good bit of traction. And in all of this, what we are doing is that we are trying to build some solutions proactively. It may be the case that they are not fully built up, 100% built up, say 60 or 70% built, which would typically, I mean, we can call those accelerators, prototypes, or whatever be it. But the main idea behind that is that if we have those ready, then we can have a much less time to productionize some of those use cases as we go forward. So that's also we are doing. And alongside that, of course, the partnership ecosystem, the likes of Intel and others, I think they are integral to build up some of these use cases as well as we go forward. So that's how I think things are panning out to me.
Yeah, so it's great that you touched on the retail sector, which has a great dependency on the supply chain management. So, Kristen, given the reliance of the retail sector on the supply, how do you see AI expected to impact the supply chain operations?
Well, I mean, Debraj kind of hinted at a lot of these applications that today, the supply chain, all the different kinds of applications that are being used. Again, it's how can you take existing applications, make them smarter, make them more available to do menial tasks that associates spend probably lots of hours, entering in things that they may not need to. They can pull this data pretty, it's already there. Using this kind of technology can do some of these menial tasks. But supply chain is super important to be able to collect, all the data from, where it's being built, all the way to the distributor, all the way to the shelf. GenAI in AI specifically, can enable a lot of these use cases to understand and track and trace how long has that product been on a pallet? Maybe it's sensitive to temperature and things like that. So, using AI without GenAI can enable some of these use cases for supply chain. And I kind of separate out those two because AI is obviously being implemented today. GenAI is just being able to make that maybe more human readable, more human understanding. And as we start to look at computer vision with these GenAI large language models, it's being able to tell about the scene more intelligently for a human to be able to react more quicker. So they're not having to, sit and look at a picture and try to pick out what they're looking for. The GenAI can pull that out immediately for them and show what they should be looking at, right? An easy example is if I'm in a warehouse and I'm supposed to be wearing a hard hat, am I walking in without one or with one? And, that could be quickly identified, and the text can be pushed out to the foreman or whoever to say, hey, there's a violation. So those things are happening today, but to make them smarter is just one step forward where GenAI can support that.
So, Debraj, you saw that great perspective from Krishna about the utilization of automation within the supply chain and where the intersect is with the technology. Now, from HCL perspective, when it comes to solutioning and value add for the customers, maybe you can kind of shed light on some of the examples of solutions that HCLTech is working on around the supply chain management.
Surely. So in fact, just to continue from where Christine left, I think across the entire SCORE framework, which we have to think of, which is supply chain operations reference, which is kind of a standard framework for all the supply chain processes, we are seeing a good bit of traction across the entire value chain. That would be across planning, sourcing, manufacturing, which would be on the CPG manufacturing side, then logistics and distribution. There's also reverse logistics, the returns piece of it. Now, in terms of solutions that we are building, so if we were to start from planning as an example, the entire area of demand forecasting, I think there is a lot that AI can do over there. How better we can have a demand forecast built, which just not takes the internal company data, but also external data, as an example, weather data, or let's say CPI data, which would be consumer price index, or any kind of disruptions which are foreseen, be it a black swan event or any other. And if you can build some of those into the model, the forecast accuracy goes up, and things like tracking signal and all, which are key KPIs for demand forecasting, they go up a lot. So that's one solution which we are building. If I were to talk of, let's say, logistics and warehousing, again, a big area where AI can have a big amount of role. The entire piece of last mile track and trace, because last mile is all about parcel couriers, where there would be typically the milk runs which are being delivered literally at the customer's doorsteps. And a way to track the couriers is something which is very important. So over there, that's another area where also we are investing some good bit of time, because we are seeing some good bit of traction over there. But that's not to say that the first and middle mile are left out. So things around freight consolidation, which are key concepts for as an example, any company, as a matter of fact, or load consolidation, or let's say load balancing, which is like mapping the trailers with the right SKUs. So things like those, again, we are investing some bit of time over there too. And the other part, I think, of supply chain, which is also crucial, is the entire area of responsible supply chain. Because just like generative AI, I think ESG is another major topic, which is pretty much on top of the mind for most of the companies. So is there a way we can build something around green supply chain, or let's say recyclability in packaging, things like those? That's, I think, one more area which HCL is focusing quite a lot on, because I think sooner than later, these things will come by a lot more. How to make this entire thing. Say, as an example, track and trace from the first point of the sourcing right onto the last piece of it, which typically we would call the farm to fork model in the food and beverage industry. Is there a way we can have a traceability of the entire sourcing, suppliers, and all of those? So I think that entire sustainable supply chain, green supply chain, whatever we call that, circular supply chain, that's another area of focus. So I think that's some of the areas, Sunil. Those are some of the key areas where we are investing in some bit of solutions now.
And Christian, when we think about customer experience, right? So one of the biggest area is the omni-channel. So what are you seeing from that aspect?
Well, omni-channel is really just being able to provide that continuous journey I call it continuous journey to purchase, right? So if I start online, if I'm looking at a product and then I move to my phone and then I walk into the store because I want to touch and feel it, it's really providing that seamless experience from online all the way into the store. And then my path to purchase is going to be at the checkout. So, the impact there is can I follow that journey? Where can I meet the customer where they want to buy? And making sure that their experience is as seamless. And sometimes that's really hard for retailers because they often don't know what's on the shelf. And it's hard to know because it's a moving product. There's customers that are in there, they're buying things, they're picking them up, they're putting back down, right? So when you have digital shelves, when you have this kind of digitization and can understand what's happening in the store, it can make the online experience a little bit better when you're trying to do a BOPUS order or something like that. But it is definitely challenging. For retailers to be able to do these kinds of things. They're getting smarter by the day, and these kinds of technologies are going to just keep on helping them get smarter.
Yeah, have you seen a couple of core examples where you see AI really playing a part in that experience with a customer?
Well, I think it's, I personally haven't seen it yet. I think that the desire is to be able to provide really cool things like, good, recommendations for the customer, product information, right? When I'm in a store, maybe I'm looking at some ingredients. I'm in a grocery store and I'm like, hey, what can I do with these ingredients that are in front of me? What kind of a meal can I make? I think the desire is there, and I think the imagination is there. And I think it's just, for me, it's always, where does the business want to focus their time and attention? And where's that, like we started out at the very beginning, where's the return on investment for me? Because sometimes that's hard to measure, but it's having those engaging conversations with the retail, the business, and seeing where the biggest real return on investment is.
So it's interesting you said about retailers, trying to have the right understanding of AI. So it's really about preparing the retailers with AI in mind for the future and the business buy-in. So Debraj, from that perspective, right, how do you believe that we can prepare the retail businesses for the future with AI integration and ensure business buy-in?
Yeah, surely. I think that's a very interesting question. I mean, the way I look at it, there are basically three phases. Probably we are in the third phase of AI evolution. The first one was more around legacy AI, which were typically the machine learning, which we all know of. Then came generative AI. So if AI was about the classical AI, that is, generative AI would be about content generation, new content. But alongside that, a parallel thing which is also coming up is the entire area of responsible AI, where we are talking about the fact that there can be a lot of what we would call hallucinations, of course, in generative AI output. But alongside that, there would be the entire area of copyright violation, all its plagiarisms and so on, IP infringement. Because what you are creating on generative AI, using generative AI, you never really know whether that particular content was already in some form or shape had been created by somebody else. So while, of course, the hype or the euphoria around generative AI is still around, but I think it's just a matter of time before the entire thing of responsible AI also comes by. And I think to your question about where retailers can they can leverage value, I think, as I said, like across the entire spectrum, starting from the front end store ops, or let's say the classical areas around digital marketing or commerce, right? Moving on to the back end, supply chain, merchandising, assortment planning, SKU optimization. I think there are a whole lot of areas, and probably we are just scratching the surface of it. Maybe 5 or 10 odd % of the possible use cases which we can think of, we have just kind of touched upon. I think a lot is there. It's also about the appetite of the retailers to take some of those, because they also need to be enabled in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the skill sets, and so on. And I think over there, partners like Intel and all, they have a big role in terms of framing up some of those computing powers and stuffs, which will enable, in a way, some real cutting edge use cases to be implemented at their end. So I think we are just starting this journey, if I were to call it that way, and real exciting times ahead for retailers and for companies like us.
Yeah, and Christian, where do you see from Intel's perspective about this, preparing the retailers and the business buy-in?
That's a great question. I mean, personally, I came from retail. I spent 25 plus years in retail, and new technology is always around the corner, right? So for me, the very first thing is to do things like this, engage with experts, understand, get the knowledge, really, educate myself and engage in a conversation and truly understand what the impact is for me. Debraj, you mentioned, being prepared for your ethical conversations, right? So what does that look like? So should I have a data governance and ethics committee where I have to run the use cases by and make sure it's meeting my corporate, the guidelines? So I think there's a lot of things to do to prepare. Nothing new for retailers. They're so used to change. I mean, they look at what they did over the pandemic. They were just amazing, right? To be able to do what they've done and to stay alive and to, kind of brute force through this supply chain issues that they've been having and do all of the things they do. Just this isn't going to be any different for them. But I think it can, done right, because sometimes it's not always done right. Done right, I think this could be a technology to really transform retail.
Yeah. And Kristen, from Intel's perspective at Intel Vision this year, right? What should business leaders expect, especially since the core focus is on AI?
Well, they're going to have to join to find out, but it's going to be AI everywhere, if that gives you a hint.
Great. Okay. Well, it's been great talking to both of you. So on that note, we have now come to the end of our discussion. So I just want to say many thanks to Kristen and Debraj for joining me in this webinar. And finally, thank you everyone who took the time to watch this webinar. So until next time, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.